The entire country and world at large are under threat from climate change. Oregon is lucky to host several old-growth forests that are very important to protecting our local ecosystem. Though now more than ever, our forests are once again facing grave danger with a new executive order being passed by our president, which aims to increase logging in national forests and public lands. This also bypasses the Endangered Species Act, which could cause extinction of species otherwise protected. With the destruction of many trees and disregard for any animal in the path of the machine, many beautiful ecosystems are sure to be decimated and not to be the same for hundreds of years to come. These new forests will take over 250 years to become old growth again, with forest fires traveling faster through recently logged woods because of higher wind speeds and drier grounds. With less than 10% of our old growth forests remaining in Oregon, they are very sacred to us, housing all sorts of crazy animals and ecosystems and plants that are pretty interesting and should be kept alive. All of this contributes to the ever-growing danger of climate change, which is not only a danger to humanity, but any local ecosystem that it affects.
So just starting out, what is Oregon Wild and what do you guys do?
Oregon Wild just celebrated our 50-year anniversary last year. So we have been around since 1974 working to protect public lands, wildlife, waters. We began as the Oregon Wilderness Council and have kind of evolved to expand our reach to working on some state lands and endangered species issues. But generally we're here to protect public lands and the animals, fish, and communities that rely on them.
Can you tell me why are old growth forests so important to the environment compared to controlled ecosystems?
Oh wow. Old growth forests are incredibly biologically diverse. So they're really, really important for protecting climate change, or fighting climate change rather. Mature and old growth forests help clean our water, and also their root systems and the intact ecosystem around them act as sponges. So when it rains in places that maybe don't get a lot of rain, that water stays in the ground and then slowly filters out. When you start doing these more controlled ecosystems, that water either washes right out, or if you're doing replanting in a plantation style, so you've got a bunch of little very, very thirsty seedlings, then they start sucking up all the water. So you can have places like Yachats in Oregon, where they are on the coast, which is very rainy in Oregon. The forest in their backyard is a temperate rainforest, but they experience drought conditions because their watershed has been so hammered by industrial logging, the clear cutting and the growing of those young saplings. So water everywhere and not a drop to drink, right? For communities like that.
So my name is Liam Browning. I work for the Bureau of Land Management as a forester out of the State Office in Portland.
What sort of things are you working on, specifically, what are you working on currently?
So if you went down to Southern Oregon, been a lot of insect and disease damage projects that will make those forests more resilient. And then you've got other projects that are geared towards accelerating and improving habitat for spotted owls or marbled murrelet, right? And then you've got other projects that are based on more timber production for sustained yield under the ONC Act and providing for the local jobs and local economies. So all kinds of cool projects within the realm of forestry that are happening all the time.
even if an old growth tree like naturally falls down, it's still helping the ecosystem. But if it's like dragged away and used for lumber, then like those effects like.
As for the removing them from the ecosystem, it's not just removing that tree itself, the equipment that has to come in. You have to build roads, you have to drag those logs out. So there are cumulative effects of that. That's how a lot of invasive species get introduced into forest ecosystems, is in the tires and the equipment of logging. So you start really disturbing that ecosystem when you come in and you say like, well, this tree's dead, let's haul it out and turn it into money. That can have profound impacts on the ecosystem, especially if you're doing it on a really large scale.
The BLM and the Forest Service did a few years ago that looked at the threats to old growth, and the results of that were really interesting. And basically, number one was catastrophic wildfire. Then the next one down was insect and disease, and then drought, right? Like those are the massive threats, right? And then at the very end, right, there's this tiny little blip that says logging, right? Like,
of course, some old growth is going to be killed by natural disturbances, landslides, fires. The issue we have is we have so little left. We're not only seeing the consequences of climate change in terms of more intense fires, but also management is coming in and, through aggressive logging can make those fires much worse and can expose those old growth to increasing risk, as well as cutting off the supply of future old growth.
I'd say that active management, right, is like a solution, right? A lot of like, when a forest is overstocked and really dense, right, then it's at like a threat, right? So the solution is, treating that density, having healthier forests that are more resilient to wildfire.
Mature and old growth forests have thicker bark. Their branches are taller off the ground, so you're not going to have necessarily the same fire risk if you have a community that's surrounded by a mature and an old growth forest, as opposed to a plantation where it's really young, there's a lot of branches near the ground, and there's creating those places, because they've been aggressively managed, tend to be drier in the understory, so that is going to also fuel a lot more wind and fire.
So with like kind of like a lot of the like numbers that we've heard going like around about like climate change, how like I've heard like 2030 a lot, we need to like get our shit together by 2030. How do like you and your organization like kind of find the hope to like keep fighting this battle like when the science kind of seems like so bleak?
We know we have incredible allies in our forests, and we know that the natural world is this huge ally that can be employed in helping us mitigate and fight climate change. And the solutions there are fairly straightforward. We don't have to invent these machines that pull carbon out of the sky and then inject it into underground. We just need to stop trying to monetize and exploit the natural world. There are significant challenges under the Trump administration.
I mean, I can imagine, but like
the administration has come forward with an executive order that essentially says we need to prioritize logging on our public lands.
Yeah, so I can't speculate on the executive order and where all that like that's a headquarters level thing way above my pay grade and all that, but yeah, so like I think I'd look at our resource management plans, right? I mentioned those before, but those kind of give it's a really in-depth analysis that went into those, and it'll give a range of timber production and a range of acreage treatments, right? So from year to year, sometimes, production can vary high or low on that, but it's all within the bounds of those RMPs.
As part of those executive orders, interest in how do we get around the Endangered Species Act? How do we get around the Clean Water Act? How do we get around these public processes that allow us, the public, to have a say in how our lands are managed? They want to kind of find shortcuts around those.
When I was in school, right, one of the main things was what are the landowner objectives there, right? So it might be treating to improve and accelerate habitat, right? Or it could be reducing fuels, or or it could be timber production to meet sustained yield under the ONC Act.
And this is all framed around a timber emergency because of the tariffs that the president is also placing, which include imports on lumber out of Canada, which, we provide a lot of our own lumber, but some of it does come in from Canada. The president has invented this shortage. And so saying, well, this emergency I created, now I get to declare an emergency, and that declaration sets the stage for them trying to get around the normal processes like environmental assessments and public participation in these things.
Literally, we have the best science, we have the best operators, we've got the top professionals in the field, and we really know how to do this in a beneficial and sustainable manner.
Pushing back against the Trump administration's firing of all their scientific experts, whether that's NOAA, the Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management. We don't always see eye to eye with the Forest Service or the BLM. We still want those experts to have jobs, to have their expertise. If you purge all of that knowledge and all of that experience, the projects they produce are going to be even worse. And I think that we want to treat those people, again, even if we disagree with them, with some respect. They deserve to know if they have a job and to be able to do it to the best of their ability. Our forests are really important, especially here in Oregon. We have globally significant forests. Some of the top carbon storing forests are here in Oregon. In the Coast Range, those forests store more carbon per acre than the Amazon. So our ability to say, these are our public lands, we want them managed for conservation, for carbon storage, for clean water, not as a piggy bank for the logging industry. That is a responsibility that we have in the Pacific Northwest to protect our forests for the world. And the way we do that is by getting involved, contacting our elected officials, joining groups that are working to conserve these forests. That is the most powerful thing that we can do right now.
And then, there's a lot of public opinion on how to manage our public lands, and a lot of really vocal voices, right? I think a lot of times we hear the two sides are, you're cutting too much or you're not cutting enough. Yeah, so BLM forestry is multi-use and multifaceted, right? We have projects that are improving habitat and protecting our streams, and at the same time, contributing timber and helping the local economies and creating jobs. And as well, under the ONC Act, it's kind of unique to Western Oregon. We've got receipt sharing from some of these timber revenues. So a big portion of the receipts that are generated off of these sales is actually going straight back to the counties for some of their essential services. So their libraries, their schools, their law enforcement, their infrastructure, right? So yeah, I think that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for a win-win, right? We want the best for the environment, we want the best for sustainability, right? And we also want to meet, the requirements under the law and provide for local counties. And yeah, so that's what we're going for.
Thank you for that.
Sweet. That was pretty great.
Personally, our priorities line up a lot more with Oregon Wild. However, our society, to be sustainable, we do need these organizations thinking about productivity. As it was explained to us, the specific site we visited was a pretty good option for logging, as it had already been hit by wildfire and extreme winds. This doesn't mean that every site logged is a good option, though. It's a balance to strike. Both Aaron and Liam did seem genuinely passionate about their fields and what they perceive as the best for Oregon. Even though our priorities align more with Aaron at Oregon Wild, we wanted to keep this unbiased and let our audience, which is our local community, form their own opinion, which is exactly how it should be. There's always going to be disagreements on how to use our land and resources, but it should be up to the people that live there to decide that. Our government and the current administration is proving they are incompetent and evil and are a threat to the climate. The first step in protecting our planet is protecting the land that we get to be so lucky to call home.